I was standing at the end of our dining table, refilling everyone's sweet tea, when my husband leaned back in his chair and said, loud enough for our kids and his mother to hear, "Is this useless old woman gonna stuff her face again and then complain about being tired?" The room went quiet, my cheeks burned, and I could see my son staring at his plate while his grandmother smirked. In that moment, something inside me snapped, but I did not shout or cry. I just put the pitcher down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, said, "Excuse me," and walked out of my own house. They all thought they had me under control, but they had no idea what I was about to set in motion behind their backs. Friends, before we dive into this story, I want to ask for a small favor. If you like real-life stories like mine, told honestly and from the heart, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like so it reaches more people. Tell me in the comments which country and city you're watching from, and if any part of my story reminds you of something you've lived through. Now let me tell you exactly how that one insult at the dinner table became the beginning of the end for my husband's fake power. I hold the sweating pitcher of sweet tea just a little tighter, trying to steady my hand as I move around the table, refilling glasses like I've done 1,000 times before. The air feels thick, heavy with the smell of roasted chicken and the hum of small talk. Then Marcus pushes his chair back with that loud scrape he knows gets everyone's attention. I freeze for half a second, then turn toward him just in time to hear his voice slice through the room. "Is this useless old woman gonna stuff her face again and then complain about being tired?" His words hit me so hard I swear I feel them in my stomach. For a moment, no one breathes. My kids stare at their plates, pretending they didn't hear the insult meant to humiliate me. His mother lets out this little smirk, the kind she thinks I don't notice, and I just stand there, pitcher in hand, feeling heat crawl up my neck. But underneath the embarrassment, there's something sharper, something I've pushed down for years, a cold anger that feels unfamiliar and dangerous. I know everyone at that table thinks I'll laugh it off or let it slide like I always do, but something in me shifts right there between the green beans and the cornbread, and I know I can't go back to being quiet. My whole body feels trembling and still at the same time as I set the pitcher down on the table. It makes a soft thud, but it sounds louder in my ears. I wipe my hands slowly on the dish towel, giving myself those 2 small seconds to breathe, to steady the storm rising in my chest. Marcus is still staring at me like he's daring me to react, waiting to see if he gets a show. I don't give him one. I don't give anyone one. My voice comes out calm. Too calm, the kind of calm that scares me because it feels like it came from someone else. "Excuse me," I say. That's it. No yelling, no tears, just 2 quiet words that feel like a door locking behind me. I walk away from the table without looking at Marcus, because if I look at him, I might lose this new, strange clarity holding me together. I hear his mother whisper something under her breath. I hear a fork drop. I hear my daughter shift in her chair, but I don't turn back. I head straight to the hook by the hallway and grab my keys. They jingle, loud in the silence I've created, and that sound alone feels like a decision being made. The porch air hits me as soon as I step outside, warm but still cooler than the house I just left behind. It fills my lungs in a way that almost hurts, like I've been breathing shallow for too many years. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my wrists, in my throat, pushing me forward. By the time I reach my old Honda and open the door, my hands shake, but I don't stop. I slide in, close the door, and for the first time in a long time, I sit alone with myself and don't feel immediately wrong for it. When the engine starts, the vibration runs through me like a second heartbeat, steadying me. I grip the steering wheel and look at the house for just one moment, the glow of the dining room window, the silhouettes moving inside. That used to be my whole world. Now it just looks small, like a place I've already stepped out of. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do next. I don't have a plan or a speech or even the right words for the anger and hurt twisting inside me. All I know is that something broke open at that table, something I can't patch back together, and maybe I shouldn't. As I pull out of the driveway, the fear is still there, sitting heavy in my chest. But there's something else sitting beside it. Something that feels like the start of power. Something that feels like the first breath before a long run. I drive into the night knowing one simple truth. I'm done being anyone's punchline. I'm done shrinking myself to fit inside a life that keeps getting smaller. And whatever comes next, even if it scares me, even if it hurts, will at least be mine. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed like mosquitoes, low and steady, as I sat across from Mr. Hines in that small, windowless office. The leather chair creaked under me every time I shifted, and I could still smell the fried chicken from dinner lingering in my clothes, like it followed me out of that house, clinging to my skin. The office was half dark, the only light coming from the desk lamp and that cold blue overhead glow. It was almost midnight, but Mr. Hines didn't rush. He slid a thick stack of papers toward me, quiet and methodical, like we were talking about something ordinary, like I wasn't about to blow up my whole life. I looked down and saw my name over and over again. On the house, on Marcus's auto shop, on accounts I didn't even realize existed. I didn't say anything at first, just stared. My name felt foreign, printed in bold like that, tied to so many things I never agreed to. My hands trembled, and I laced my fingers together on my lap, pressing hard, trying to hide it. Mr. Hines looked up at me, his voice calm but serious, explaining how we could remove my name as guarantor, how we could lock the accounts before more damage was done. I nodded, but my mind was spinning. I wasn't just signing papers. I was stepping away from the version of my life I had been desperately trying to believe in. I picked up the top page, and my eyes flicked across the numbers, amounts I couldn't explain, balances that didn't match what Marcus ever told me. The words swam a little from the tears pressing at the back of my eyes. I blinked hard. I couldn't cry in here. Not yet. My chest tightened as I realized I had co-signed all this mess. I had let him handle the business side, like he always said, while I worked nights, made the meals, managed the schedules. And for what? So he could borrow money with my name on it, all while making me feel like I brought nothing to the table? Shame curled low in my stomach, mixing with something bitter. "We can file tonight," Mr. Hines said, sliding a pen toward me. "You'll need to sign here and here. This won't solve everything, but it gives us control." His tone was careful, no judgment, but I could feel the weight behind it. I hesitated. Images flashed in my head. Malik asking about basketball camp, Jada wanting new choir shoes, me clipping coupons and skipping lunch shifts to make ends meet while Marcus flashed $100 bills at the barber shop. My fingers tightened around the pen, but my hand didn't move yet. I looked up at Mr. Hines. If I do this, it'll hit everything. The shop, his accounts, he's gonna lose it. He nodded gently. "You're protecting yourself. That's the priority." I nodded too, slowly, like I was giving myself permission to stop being scared. The guilt came in waves. It always did when I thought about the kids. They were home right now, probably asleep, probably thinking I was still in that house, still holding everything together. I thought about how Marcus used to be, before the shop started draining money like a sinkhole, before he started coming home late and shutting down every time I asked questions. I used to think we were partners. I used to believe the long hours, the hustle, were for our future. I didn't know I was the only one paying for it. My thumb brushed the edge of the paper where the ink had bled a little. I swallowed hard, chest tightening again. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. About how he used my silence to build a whole life with my credit and my labor while telling me I was the burden. And the worst part? I'd let it happen, piece by piece, trying to keep the peace, trying to be the glue. I looked back down at my name on the documents, and for once, it didn't feel like a weakness. It felt like a flag, like something worth reclaiming. I exhaled, long and shaky, then picked up the pen again. The first signature came out wobbly, my hand still not steady, but I kept going. Line after line I signed. I whispered, "God help me," just once, barely audible, like a prayer but also like a challenge, like I was calling on something inside me I hadn't used in years. "Mr. Hines nodded quietly, collecting the pages as I finished each one, putting them into a neat pile. I watched the stack grow, and each page felt like a brick laid down on a new road. One I didn't know how to walk yet, but one I knew I couldn't avoid anymore. When it was done, I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for a second. My whole body felt hot, tense, exhausted. But there was this strange stillness in my chest, too, like the noise that had been screaming in the back of my head finally shut up. For a few seconds, I didn't feel panic. I felt space. Mr. Hines stood and walked me to the door, asking if I needed a ride home. I told him no, I had my car, and I meant it. I needed to drive myself tonight. I needed to feel the road under me, know that I had taken myself somewhere and could keep going. The parking lot was mostly empty, lit only by the security lights casting long shadows across the concrete. My car sat under one of them, the paint dull, the windshield cracked at the edge, familiar and beat up, but mine. I walked slowly, my heels clicking soft against the pavement. The Georgia night was thick, warm, and quiet, except for a few distant crickets. I opened the car door and sank into the driver's seat, letting the silence wrap around me. I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, staring at the wheel, my fingers still tingling from the signing. I thought about how Marcus would react when the bank called, about the storm he'd unleash. I thought about the kids, about what I'd just set in motion. My stomach twisted, fear creeping back in. But I didn't regret it. I couldn't. For the first time in years, I had made a choice for myself without asking anyone's permission. I knew it was going to get messy. I knew Marcus would try to spin it, blame me, maybe even come after me with words or worse. But I also knew that if I stayed quiet any longer, I'd lose whatever part of me was left. And I wasn't ready to disappear. Not anymore. I turned the key in the ignition, and the car rattled to life. The vibration ran through me like a low hum, grounding me. I backed out of the spot slowly, pulling onto the main road, headlights cutting through the dark. The city was sleeping, but I wasn't. My mind raced with everything still ahead, legal battles, conversations with the kids, facing Marcus. But under the fear, under the weight of all of it, was something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not happiness, not peace, not yet, but control. A piece of my power returned to me one signature at a time. As I drove through the empty streets, I didn't know exactly where this road would take me. But for the first time in years, I was behind the wheel of my own damn life. And that had to count for something. The smell of coffee was the only thing grounding me that morning. I stood at the kitchen counter, pouring it slowly into my favorite chipped mug, trying to keep my hands steady. The house was too quiet. Marcus sat at the dining table, one leg bouncing like always when he was feeling smug. He scrolled through Instagram, chuckling to himself, probably at some meme, or maybe at his own post in the group chat. I didn't even have to check my phone. I could guess what he wrote. Something slick like, "Had to remind her who's boss," or "Back to normal, y'all." He always performed for his people when he thought he'd won something. I didn't say a word. I didn't look at him. I just sipped my coffee and stared out the window at nothing in particular, heart already pounding in my chest, even though the day hadn't really started yet. Then his phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wood of the table. He glanced at it and said, almost to himself, "First Fulton Bank?" That's when everything inside me clenched. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch the change in his face as he picked up. "Hello?" he said, all cool at first. I watched the color drain from his cheeks as the voice on the other end kept talking. "What you mean, frozen?" he asked, his tone shifting fast. "Nah, my wife would never—" And then he paused, sat up straighter. "Run that back again?" My hand tightened around the handle of my mug. My stomach twisted. I couldn't hear the whole call, but I didn't need to. Every word he said confirmed that the bank had done exactly what Mr. Hines and I filed for last night. The accounts were frozen. The credit line was gone. His golden leash around my name had been cut. He sat there listening, nodding slowly, breathing heavier, and when he finally hung up, the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. His face was tight, his jaw locked. It was like he'd never seen me before, or like he was seeing me for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. "What did you do, Danielle?" he asked, voice low and sharp like a warning. I didn't answer right away. My heart was beating so loud I thought it might burst through my chest. Every instinct told me to look away, to shrink, to deflect. But I didn't. I turned around fully, looked him dead in the eye and said, "I protected myself." Just that. Nothing else. The words tasted strange in my mouth, like truth, but also like danger. His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I thought he might get up and throw something. But then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Malik and Jada. They both walked into the room, silent, unsure. Their faces said everything. They could feel the tension too, thick like smoke. I watched their eyes go back and forth between us. That moment wasn't just about me anymore. They were watching. They were learning. And I knew deep in my bones that whatever I did or didn't do next would stay with them longer than anything I'd ever said. Marcus stood up slowly, his movements tight, controlled. "So, that's how it is?" he asked. "You really gonna sabotage everything we built?" His voice cracked at the end, not from sadness, but from rage. "We?" I said, barely holding myself together. "You mean everything I paid for, that you put in my name without telling me? That we?" Jada shifted closer to me, and Malik looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus looked at them, then back at me, like he was trying to decide whether to keep pushing or pull back. The silence in the room was unbearable. I felt exposed, cracked open, but there was no turning back now. I had already signed, already pulled the pin. This moment was always coming, whether I wanted it or not. He grabbed his phone, muttered something under his breath, and walked toward the front door. Slammed it hard enough to make the walls shake. The sound made Jada flinch. I closed my eyes for a second and let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The kids didn't say anything right away. Malik went to the fridge, grabbed a juice, and just stood there staring at the door. Jada leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me closely like she didn't know whether to be proud or scared. "Are you okay, Mom?" she finally asked. I nodded, but I didn't answer out loud. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, like it had closed up around all the words I wasn't ready to say yet. I wanted to protect them from the mess, but it was too late for that. They were already in it. They'd heard the tone, seen the looks, felt the shift in the house. I set my mug down and placed my hand over hers. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. I wasn't sure if I believed it yet, but I needed them to hear it, needed them to hold on to that possibility. That morning made one thing painfully clear. This wasn't just about bank accounts or business loans anymore. This was about control, about respect, about whether I was going to keep fading into the background or finally stand up and be seen. By noon, the house felt different. Marcus hadn't come back. The kids stayed close to me, quiet but present, each carrying their own version of confusion and fear. I cleaned the kitchen just to stay busy, wiping the counters more times than needed, refolding towels, checking things that didn't need checking. My body moved, but my mind kept circling back to that phone call, to the shift in Marcus's face, to the heat in his voice when he asked me what I'd done. I kept thinking about how many times I let things slide to keep the peace, how many times I absorbed the hits so the house could look whole from the outside. And for what? To keep everyone comfortable while I slowly disappeared? No. That version of me had ended when I signed those papers. And today, I didn't cower. I didn't apologize. I stood up for myself, even with fear crawling up my spine, even with my children watching. I knew things would get worse before they got better, but I also knew I'd done the right thing. I had finally chosen myself. And that choice, heavy as it was, tasted like the beginning of freedom. The plastic chair squeaked under me every time I shifted, but I couldn't sit still. My scrubs stuck to my back, sweat pooling under the fabric like I'd just finished a double shift, even though I hadn't stepped into the hospital all day. The bank branch was quiet, just the hum of printers and the occasional cough from a teller. I clutched my purse tight in my lap, as if it could anchor me to the floor. Ms. Reeves, the bank manager, sat across from me in her navy suit, her perfume too sweet and too strong in the tight office space. She typed something into her computer, the clicking of her nails tapping against the keyboard like a countdown. When she turned the monitor toward me, everything else faded. There it was, in plain sight, my name, tied to a line of credit maxed out to the cent. Marcus's name wasn't even listed as a co-signer, just mine. I stared at it, eyes narrowing, lips pressed together. "That line's been used heavily over the past year," Ms. Reeves said, her voice soft like she was afraid she'd startle me. She clicked again. "And here, these are cash advances." My throat felt dry, but I nodded for her to keep going. Each click revealed something worse. Late fees stacking up for months, thousands withdrawn in single days. Then came the killer. A credit card I didn't even know existed, in my name, with charges that made my stomach turn. Hotel stays, fancy restaurants, jewelry, all within driving distance of our house. I leaned forward, squinting at the dates. He told me he was working late those nights. One of those dinners was the same weekend Jada had that choir competition, and he said he had a flat tire and couldn't make it. "Are you sure this is mine?" I asked, voice small. She nodded. "It's tied to your social security number." I sat back slowly. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped duct tape around it. My head buzzed. I knew Marcus had financial problems. I'd seen the tension, heard the excuses. But this wasn't just messy. This was betrayal. And it wasn't accidental. These weren't business mistakes or forgotten bills. This was deliberate, strategic, hidden. It took effort to keep this from me. And worse, it was done using my name, my trust, my credit. I wanted to tell myself there had to be a reason, that maybe he'd planned to pay it all back, that he didn't understand how much risk he was putting us in, that it was a one-time thing. But the dates didn't lie. Neither did the amounts. I thought about every time he told me we couldn't afford something for the kids, every time I skipped a meal to stretch the groceries, every time he rolled his eyes at my spreadsheets or told me to relax when I asked about bills. I'd believed him. I'd blamed myself for being too anxious, too controlling. I remember once crying in the bathroom because he made me feel stupid for asking where the rent money went. I thought I was the problem. Turns out, the real problem was sitting in a bar with my money and calling it stress relief. The shame burned deep, but beneath it, something colder began to rise, something sharp. I didn't speak as Ms. Reeves kept explaining my options: fraud reports, balance transfers, financial counseling. My ears barely registered the words. I was staring at the numbers and realizing just how deep the damage ran. I signed the forms she gave me to request copies of the statements. I needed proof, paper trails. I needed to see it all with my own eyes. I didn't want to just know it happened. I needed to be able to show it, to him, to the courts, to anyone who tried to tell me I was imagining things. Ms. Reeves printed everything and slid it into a plain blue folder, her eyes full of sympathy, but careful not to say too much. I thanked her, though the words caught in my throat. When I stood, my knees felt weak, like I'd aged 10 years just sitting in that chair. I held the folder to my chest like a shield as I walked out, nodding politely to the security guard who held the door for me. The air outside hit me like a wave. Warm, humid, too thick to breathe properly. I leaned against the brick wall of the bank for a second, closing my eyes, feeling the sweat bead on my forehead. I could have screamed. I could have thrown up. I could have called Marcus right then and there and told him exactly what I'd seen. But I didn't. Instead, I walked slowly to my car and sat inside, cranking the AC and laying the folder on the passenger seat like it was made of glass. I stared at it, the bank's logo shining on the cover, and let it all sink in. This wasn't just about one lie or one card. This was a pattern, a system. Marcus had been living off my name, my labor, my credit, while telling me I was lucky to have him. He wasn't just careless. He was calculating. And all this time I was too tired, too loyal, too damn hopeful to see it clearly. I felt stupid and angry. And something else I hadn't felt in a long time. Done. I was done carrying the weight of his mistakes, done explaining away the red flags, done sacrificing my future so he could keep pretending to be a man he wasn't. I knew the road ahead would be messy: divorce, financial recovery, the kids. But in that moment, sitting there in that parking lot, with the truth finally laid out in black and white, I wasn't scared. I was clear. I drove home without the radio on. No music, no distractions, just the steady hum of the road and my thoughts unraveling mile by mile. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment before getting out. The house looked the same as always, same cracked porch light, same overgrown lawn, but it didn't feel like home. Not anymore. I walked inside, past the living room, past the dishes Marcus said he'd wash and never did. I went to my bedroom, shut the door behind me, and opened that folder again. I laid out the statements across the bed like puzzle pieces, studying them like I used to study for nursing exams. There was no mystery now, no maybes, just facts. I stopped seeing Marcus as a man who was stressed or struggling or lost. I started seeing him as a man who made choices, repeated ones, selfish ones, dangerous ones. That shift in perspective, it didn't bring peace, not yet, but it brought something else. Something I'd need for what was coming next. A steel spine, a plan, and the refusal to ever be used like that again. The second I stepped into the shop, the smell hit me, motor oil, burnt rubber, and that faint metallic scent that always clung to Marcus's clothes. The place was quiet, too quiet, and the usual clang of tools or hum of music was missing. Then I heard her laugh. High-pitched, carefree, coming from the back office like she owned the place. I walked toward it, each step heavy, and there she was, legs crossed, scrolling on her phone, her long nails tapping against the screen. Her name tag said Tiffany, and the second I saw it, my stomach dropped. I knew that name. It was on the credit card statement from the bank. Groceries, Uber rides, rent payments. Right behind her on the shelf was a framed photo of my family, pushed face down like an afterthought. I stood there in the doorway for a second too long, trying to swallow the anger rising in my throat. I didn't say a word. I wanted her to look up and see me. I wanted her to feel something, anything, but she didn't even flinch, just kept scrolling. Then Marcus stepped out from behind one of the cars. His rag was already in his hand, grease on his arms, face blank until he saw me. He froze. His eyes flicked between me and Tiffany, then back again. "What you doing here?" he said, like I was interrupting something. His tone wasn't shocked. It was defensive. He started walking toward me, wiping his hands like it was a normal Tuesday. I looked back at Tiffany, then to the desk, and noticed the extra set of keys, a cup with lipstick on the rim, and a jacket slung over the chair. This wasn't just a visit. This was her space. My voice came out before I could stop it, quiet, sharp. "So this is where our money went." Tiffany finally looked up. She blinked once, then gave me a blank expression like she was confused, like she had no idea who I was or what I was doing there. Marcus stepped between us quickly, holding his hands out. "You're overreacting," he said. "It's not what it looks like." I could hear the edge in his voice, the desperation, but also the condescension. Like I was making a scene. He started talking fast, said Tiffany was just helping out at the shop, said she was part-time, off the books. "It's business, Danielle. You don't understand how things work here," he said, like I hadn't been paying bills, fixing his credit, or cleaning up after his chaos for the past 15 years. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, breathing through the nausea rising in my gut. I could see it now, all of it. The late nights, the unexplained charges, the random hours that never added up. Tiffany stood and smoothed her skirt like she was about to step into a meeting. I hated how calm she looked, how unbothered. Marcus kept talking, but I wasn't really listening anymore. My brain was scanning everything. I saw the time-stamped security camera in the corner, the calendar on the wall behind the desk, marked with days I remembered him telling me he was working late. The trash can with receipts barely stuffed inside, all of it evidence, all of it proof. And for once, I wasn't crying. I was watching. I was remembering. My hands shook, but I didn't let it show. I stepped forward and picked up a receipt off the desk just to see if I was right. Tiffany's name was printed at the top from some delivery service. The date matched a weekend Marcus told me he was out of town for a conference. "You lied to my face," I said, not yelling, not whispering, just stating a fact. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "I trusted you. I let you put things in my name. And this is what you were building? He started blaming stress. The business. Said he didn't mean for it to get complicated. But it wasn't complicated to him. It was convenient. All this time, I thought he was drowning under pressure, and he was just floating on my back while building something new with another woman. Tiffany still hadn't said a word. That silence said enough. She knew what she was part of. Whether she knew the full extent, I didn't care. She was here. She was sitting in what used to be his dream, and mine. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just walked to the center of the room and looked around at the tools, the parts, the car half finished in the bay. I remembered when Marcus used to talk about this shop like it would save us, like it would be our family's future. We used to dream about opening a second location one day. I used to believe that every missed date night, every unpaid bill, every exhausted morning was for something that would eventually pay off. But that future never included me. At least not in the version I was seeing now. I turned to him and said, "You used me." His face twisted, ready to argue, but I shook my head. "Don't say a word. Just know I see you now." I took one last look at Tiffany, then at the photo of my kids, face down on the shelf like it didn't matter. I picked it up, brushed the dust off, and tucked it under my arm. Then I walked out of that shop, past the front counter, past the walls I helped fund, out into the sun that suddenly felt too bright. The second the door closed behind me, I stood still on the sidewalk, the heat pressing against my skin, and I let it sink in. This wasn't just about money anymore, or lies on a spreadsheet. This was about who Marcus had become, who he always might have been. He didn't just make mistakes. He made a whole other life while standing on the one I built. I looked down at the photo in my hands and felt a strange calm take over me. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't wondering if I was being too harsh or too emotional. I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And that clarity didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave it shape. It gave me a direction. As I walked to my car, each step felt firmer than the last. I wasn't just going home. I was leaving the version of myself that waited, forgave, and explained things away. That woman didn't belong to this mess anymore. I didn't know what the next step would be, but I knew this. I wasn't going to clean up another lie that wasn't mine. Not ever again. The couch cushions dipped beneath me as I sat stiffly. Paper plate of untouched macaroni and cheese in my lap. Plastic fork resting on the edge. My sister's house smelled like barbecue sauce and potato salad, familiar and loud, but I couldn't taste a damn thing. My palms were damp, and I could feel everyone's eyes shifting toward me, then away again, like I was a broken piece of furniture they didn't know what to do with. Marcus was pacing by the front window, jaw tight, arms folded. Our kids sat to my left, Malik tapping his sneaker against the floor, Jada picking at the hem of her shirt. Loretta, Marcus's mother, sat up straight in the armchair across from me, one hand on her knee, the other wrapped around her sweet tea. She cleared her throat like she was about to bless the table at Thanksgiving. "Baby," she said, voice syrupy but sharp, "you don't blow up a man's life over a little disrespect." I blinked at her, stunned by how easy it was for her to say that in front of everyone, like I had set a building on fire because Marcus tripped me. She didn't stop. "That's just how men talk sometimes. You know that," she continued, shaking her head like she pitied me for not understanding. "Your generation's too sensitive. Back in my day, we didn't go running off and destroying a whole household because our feelings got hurt." Her words cut deep, not just because they were wrong, but because I'd heard them before, in different voices. At family gatherings, in church pews, in whispered warnings from women who thought endurance was the same thing as strength. "Black women been holding families together through worse," she said, looking around the room like she expected everyone to nod. And some did. Quietly. Some shifted in their seats, not looking at me. I wanted to scream, to throw the plate on the floor and list every lie, every dollar stolen, every night I cried alone after working 12 hours and coming home to an empty bed and cold leftovers. But instead, I sat still. My heart pounded so loud I couldn't hear the TV anymore. The guilt pressed in from all sides. I knew what Marcus stood to lose, The shop, the car, his pride. And I knew the kids were scared. Malik hadn't looked me in the eye all evening. Part of me wanted to say I'd fix it all, to smooth things over just to stop the looks, the judgment, the slow dripping shame that filled that room. But then I remembered those bank statements, Tiffany in his chair, my face burning as Marcus called me a useless old woman in front of my children. I remembered my daughter watching me wipe my hands on a dish towel, silently disappearing while everyone laughed. That memory sat next to me like a ghost, reminding me who I'd been before I said, enough. I was in a tug-of-war between silence and dignity, and the rope was cutting into my hands. I looked around the room and realized that nobody was going to rescue me from it. If I wanted to be seen, I had to stand in the fire they swore I built and say, yes, I lit the match. Malik finally broke the silence. His voice was soft, almost unsure. Mom, are we going to lose the house? The question hit me harder than anything Loretta said. I turned to him slowly, meeting his wide, nervous eyes. Jada leaned in a little like she needed to hear the answer too. My throat tightened, and I felt the tears threaten to rise, but I held them back. I wasn't going to lie to them. I wasn't going to pretend everything was okay when it wasn't. We might, I said. My voice didn't shake, but my chest burned. But I'm not the one who put us here. That silence that followed was thick and heavy. Loretta looked away. Marcus stopped pacing. The kids stared. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was just telling the truth. And somehow, in a room full of people who had something to say, the truth shut them all up. I sat my plate down on the side table without taking a bite. I didn't have the appetite to swallow food while people around me asked why I wasn't swallowing my pain. I stood slowly, brushing my hands on my jeans, and looked around the room one more time. Some faces looked back with pity, others with judgment. A few wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister gave me a tiny nod. That was enough. I didn't need the whole room. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy for protecting myself. The weight of that decision was still on me. My heart was still bruised, my feet unsteady. But I wasn't folding. Not tonight. I bent down to grab my purse and touched Jada's shoulder gently. You ready? I asked. She nodded. Malik followed without saying anything. Marcus watched us but didn't speak. Loretta made a noise, like she had more to say, but I was already walking toward the door. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, cooler, clearer. I knew what had just happened. I had broken something. Not just the silence, but the unspoken family rule that said women like me had to hold everything together, no matter what. That said we had to keep smiling while dying slowly inside. That said if a man didn't hit you, then it wasn't abuse. I broke that rule, and it scared me. I knew there'd be backlash, whispers, side eyes, maybe even people cutting me off. But it also freed me. Because once you tell the truth in front of people who'd rather you lie, you realize you don't need their approval to survive. You just need your own voice. As we walked to the car, the kids quiet beside me, I knew the road ahead would be long. But I also knew I'd taken a step most women never get to take, and I wasn't going back. Malik was tossing his basketball from hand to hand like it was the only thing keeping him steady. I stood in his doorway, arms crossed, waiting. The silence between us was thick, and I could feel the tension vibrating in the air. He hadn't looked at me since I walked in. Then he stopped and said it. Dad says you're trying to ruin him. Just like that. No warning, no lead-in. It hit me straight in the chest. I stared at him for a second, trying to steady my breath. Across the hall, Jada was curled up on her bed, headphones on, but I saw her glance our way. She wasn't as removed as she pretended to be. I walked into Malik's room and sat down on the edge of his bed. My legs felt heavy. He kept staring at the floor. I rubbed my palms on my jeans and said quietly, I'm not trying to ruin anybody. I'm trying to protect myself, and you, and your sister. He didn't move. I reached for his shoulder but stopped short. You know the shop, the house, the credit cards? All in my name. He used my name to build something and hid everything from me. I told him what I could without drowning him in it. The loan Marcus took out without telling me. The credit card charges I never made. The account I found with rent payments for someone else. I didn't say Tiffany's name. Not yet. I watched Malik's face shift. Confusion, hurt, anger. He shook his head slowly, like he didn't want to believe it. "Why didn't you say something before?" he whispered. I took a breath. "Because I didn't want you two caught in the middle. Because I was scared. And because I kept hoping I was wrong." He looked up then, and it gutted me. His eyes were full of doubt. "He said you were trying to embarrass him, that you froze the accounts just to punish him." His voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "He embarrassed himself, Malik. I just stopped covering for him." Then Jada's voice cut through the tension like glass breaking. "He's lying, Mal." We both turned to her. She sat up on her bed, headphones around her neck now. "I saw the texts weeks ago, on his phone, from that girl at the shop, Tiffany." Malik turned sharply toward her. "What?" She nodded. "I didn't know what to do, okay? I wasn't supposed to be on his phone, but he left it open. They were texting all day. She called him baby." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe it wasn't serious. I thought maybe it'd stop." I looked between them, my heart breaking in new directions. I hated that she had carried that alone. I hated that she thought she had to. Malik stood suddenly and started pacing, just like Marcus does when he's cornered. "So you both knew? You both been keeping stuff from me?" His voice was rising. "No," I said quickly. "I didn't know Jada saw the messages. I only found out about Tiffany last week when I went to the shop. But your dad's been lying to all of us for a long time, Malik." Jada looked down, tears falling quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to make it worse." I reached out and held her hand. Malik just stood there, breathing hard, like the walls were closing in on him. They started arguing, fast, loud. Malik accused her of picking sides. Jada shouted back that he was being blind. "You think Mom's the bad guy? Really?" she snapped. "She worked double shifts while he played king of the shop. She fed us while he took someone else out to dinner." Malik yelled that she didn't know what it was like to be a son in this situation, like he was supposed to defend his father no matter what. I tried to stop them, tried to get them to breathe, but it was like watching a car slide on ice, no control. I stood between them and raised my voice. "Enough!" And that got their attention. I looked at both of them, my voice shaking. "This is exactly what I didn't want. I didn't want you to have to choose between your parents. But here we are." They went quiet, but the silence was painful. Jada wiped her face. Malik grabbed his bag from the floor and slung it over his shoulder. "I'm going to practice," he muttered. "Dad's picking me up." Then he was gone. The door slammed harder than it needed to. I sank back down onto Malik's bed. The air knocked out of me. Jada sat beside me, her head on my shoulder, still crying. I stroked her hair gently, not saying anything. My heart was split down the middle. I hated that they were in this. That they even had to know the word affair or think about who lied more. They should have been worried about school, friends, music, not bank accounts and betrayal. I thought I could shield them. I thought if I took the brunt of it, they could stay kids just a little longer. But choices have ripple effects, and standing up for myself meant they had to face truths that were too big for them. I kissed Jada's forehead and whispered, "You did nothing wrong." She nodded into my shoulder but didn't speak. I didn't know what would happen with Malik. If he'd come back with new questions or deeper anger. But I knew something had shifted forever in our house. We weren't the same family anymore. We couldn't go back. The only thing left was figuring out how to move forward, one broken piece at a time. That night, after Jada fell asleep on the couch, I sat at the kitchen table alone with the lights off. I stared at my phone, waiting for a text that didn't come. I wanted Malik to message me, just a "home safe" or "good night." But nothing. The silence stretched long. I thought about what Marcus must be saying to him, how he was probably twisting things, playing victim, blaming me. I'd lived with that manipulation for years, and now my son was seeing it with fresh eyes. I didn't know which way he'd go. I just knew I couldn't lie anymore to keep the peace. Not for them. Not for me. My decision to fight back was forcing all of us to redefine who we were. It hurt, but it was real, and I'd take painful truth over comfortable lies any day. I looked around the dark kitchen, breathed deep, and whispered to myself, "You did the right thing." I had to believe that, even when it cost me the comfort of my own children, even when it broke their hearts, because staying silent wouldn't save them. But maybe, just maybe, standing up would show them what survival really looks like. The papers were spread out across the table: utility bills, school fee notices, legal forms from Mr. Hines. I had a highlighter in one hand, trying to make sense of the mess, and a pen tucked behind my ear. My back hurt from leaning over too long, but I didn't move. I was in the zone, head down, focused on what needed to be done, when the front door slammed so hard the walls seemed to flinch. The sound cracked through the house like thunder. I froze. A beat later, Marcus came stomping into the kitchen, red-faced and breathing hard, waving a thick envelope in the air like it was proof I had committed a crime. His work boots thudded against the tile, and the smell of engine grease and sweat followed him in. "You had me served at the damn shop?" he barked, voice low and sharp like a knife. "You sent this in front of my employees?" He slammed the envelope down in front of me, pieces of paper spilling out. "What the hell is wrong with you?" His words were hot, spit flying from the corners of his mouth. I kept my hands flat on the table so he wouldn't see them shaking. He didn't wait for a response. He kept coming. "Ungrateful, evil, lying-ass traitor," he spat, each word louder than the last. He stepped in closer, hovering over me now. I could see the sweat glistening on his forehead, smell the motor oil soaked into his shirt. He was close enough that I could feel the heat off his body, and for a split second I thought he might actually put his hands on me. My throat tightened. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but I didn't move. I forced myself to look at the papers on the table instead of his face. If I looked at him, I might flinch. I might cry. And I couldn't afford to do either. He leaned in, hissing, "You think you're going to survive out here on your own? You think they'll believe you over me?" My hands curled into fists under the table. I told myself not to react. Not yet. "I'm done," I said, voice low but clear. "Done being your guarantor, your maid, your cover. I have every right to walk away." His laugh was cold, loud, and mean. "You? Walk away? You ain't got shit without me." Then the threats started. "I'll take the kids," he growled. "I'll ruin your name at that hospital. You think you're smart, but I can make people see who you really are. Crazy, bitter, delusional." The words didn't even surprise me anymore. I'd heard versions of them before, just never this concentrated, this loud. My fear peaked, full body, like a wave crashing over me, and then something in me flipped. I reached for my phone with a steady hand, unlocked it, opened the voice recorder, and hit the big red circle. I set it on the table, facing him. "Say that again," I said. My voice came out calm, even. He looked at the phone, and for the first time all night, he hesitated. He took a step back. "You recording me now?" he snapped. "You gonna play this for your little lawyer friend?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The red light was blinking. It was enough. He stared at me for a moment, breathing hard, hands twitching at his sides, and then he turned and stormed out, muttering curses on his way to the door. When it slammed behind him, the silence he left behind felt like a vacuum. I sat there for a while, still frozen. My body started to shake the moment he was gone. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I finally exhaled. My whole body felt tight and loose at the same time, like my bones had turned to rubber. I reached for the phone and saved the recording, fingers moving like they belonged to someone else. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the door. The table was a mess now, papers everywhere, but my mind was finally clear. I grabbed my notebook, flipped to a clean page, and wrote at the top, "Safety plan." Then I picked up the phone again. I called Mr. Hines first, left him a message about what had just happened, asked him to call back in the morning. Then I found the number my coworker had slipped into my locker weeks ago, an emergency counselor she said helped her cousin escape a bad situation. I called it. A woman picked up. I told her I needed help. She asked me questions gently. I gave honest answers. It felt strange telling the truth out loud like that. Strange and necessary. She helped me figure out next steps, emergency contacts, a bag with documents, a separate account. She didn't make me feel dramatic. She didn't question me. She just listened and guided. When we hung up, I felt like I'd taken the first real step out of the quicksand I'd been stuck in. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was acting, planning, protecting. I walked through the house checking locks, closing blinds. I tucked the recording into a password-protected folder on my phone. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, really looked. My eyes were tired. My mouth was tight. But I was still standing, still here, still in one piece. That mattered. That counted for something. My fear wasn't gone, but it wasn't running the show anymore. I had evidence now. I had a plan. I wasn't invisible. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I didn't lie awake crying either. I lay in bed listening for footsteps, every little creak making my body tense. But with every hour that passed without him coming back, I breathed a little deeper. I wasn't safe yet, not fully, but I had taken a step toward it. I was building something, not revenge, not destruction, protection. A life I could live in without looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. And no matter what Marcus tried to say, or twist, or threaten, I had finally chosen myself. That night changed something in me. Not just the fear, not just the fight. It woke up a part of me that had been buried under years of keeping the peace. A part that wasn't just trying to survive. A part that wanted more. And she wasn't going anywhere. The box was heavier than it looked, mostly full of mismatched dishes I picked up from Goodwill for $6. I stood in the middle of the small one-bedroom apartment, shifting the weight from one arm to the other, and looked around. The carpet was worn and flattened in places, a weird beige that used to be cream. The fridge hummed louder than any fridge should, like it had something to prove. The walls were bare, off-white, slightly dingy at the corners, but they were mine. It hit me then. This was really my place, not ours. Not borrowed, not temporary. Mine. The silence wrapped around me, not cold or empty, but soft. No footsteps stomping. No passive-aggressive cabinet slamming. Just quiet. Just space. I set the box on the chipped laminate counter and leaned against it, breathing in through my nose, letting the feeling of this new beginning settle into my chest. I hadn't brought much. Just what could fit in my car, what the kids didn't want to keep at Marcus's house, and what I'd hidden in a storage bin when things started falling apart. A couple of pots, some blankets, one suitcase of clothes, and a few photos. The mattress on the floor sat in the corner of the bedroom with no frame yet, and there were no curtains on the windows, just those flimsy mini blinds that never close right. But it didn't matter. I walked slowly through each room, even though there were only 3, touching the edges of things like I needed to confirm they were real. My name was on the lease. My money paid the first month. My effort made this happen. That night, after putting a few dishes away and making a sad sandwich on a paper plate, I sat on the mattress and stared up at the ceiling. No TV, no music. Just the quiet. I missed the kids. I missed hearing Malik bouncing that ball down the hall, Jada humming with her headphones in. I even missed the sound of Marcus's keys in the door because it reminded me how far gone that life really was. The grief came in like a tide, slow at first, then full and choking. I curled up on the mattress, hugging a pillow that smelled like old laundry detergent, and let myself cry. Not soft tears, but the kind that shake your ribs and make your jaw ache. I cried for the version of me that stayed too long, for the money I might never get back, for every dream I buried under duty. But even in the middle of all that sorrow, something else was there. Relief. It was strange, feeling pain and freedom at the same time. But that's what it was. No one was watching me cry to use it against me later. No one was listening just to twist my words. No one was calling me dramatic. I could break here and not be punished for it. That realization hit hard. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie and just lay there, staring at the blank ceiling that didn't expect anything from me. I went to my first therapy session that same week. A small office near the hospital where I work, with soft lighting and tissues already waiting on the side table. The therapist, a black woman in her 50s, reminded me of my aunt, warm, direct, no nonsense. I didn't plan on saying much at first, but once I opened my mouth, the words just poured out. I told her about the yelling, the lies, the years of being made to feel like too much and not enough at the same time. I told her about the kids, the fear, the guilt. I told her about Tiffany and Loretta and how Marcus could turn anything into my fault with a few well-placed words. I cried so hard I had to stop and breathe into a tissue just to see straight. But then I laughed too. I laughed when I said I wanted to learn how to budget for 1 instead of 4. When I said I might go back to school. When I said I wasn't done dreaming just because I was starting over at 45 in a place with no furniture and a noisy fridge. I left that office with a headache and swollen eyes, but I also left with something new. Permission. Permission to build something just for me. I stopped at the dollar store on the way home and picked up a plastic shower curtain with a blue and white pattern that reminded me of ocean waves. I bought a cheap frame and printed a photo of me with Malik and Jada from a trip we took to Savannah years ago, before things got bad, before Marcus started hiding phones and ignoring birthdays. That night, I hung both up. The curtain in the bathroom made it feel less temporary. The photo on the wall made the space feel less lonely. I walked from room to room again, slower this time, and let myself be proud. No one gave me this. No one handed it to me. I scraped it together piece by piece, heartbreak by heartbreak, and it was mine. All mine. There was still so much I didn't know. How long the money would last, how the custody arrangements would play out, how Marcus would retaliate next. I wasn't naive about it. I knew the hard parts weren't over. But standing in that little apartment with a floor that creaked and walls that echoed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being perfect. The peace that comes from knowing you are no longer betraying yourself to keep someone else comfortable. I didn't need a big house or a matching dish set or even a couch yet. What I needed was space to exist, to heal, to make choices without fear. This apartment, with its humming fridge and slanted towel rack, gave me that. And for now, that was more than enough. The bench was harder than I remembered. I shifted my weight, trying to get comfortable, but the wood pressed straight through me. My hands were wrapped around a cardboard cup of coffee I'd bought on the way in. It had gone cold, but I kept holding it like it could still warm me. Across the plaza, people moved in and out of the courthouse doors like it was just another Tuesday. But for me, everything had shifted. Mr. Hines stepped outside, scanning the crowd until his eyes found mine. He gave me a small nod. That was it. That one gesture told me what I needed to know. The temporary orders had been approved. I stared down at the cracks in the concrete under my shoes and let the news settle in. Marcus had to stay away from me. The finances were now under court supervision. We'd split time with the kids. I could breathe. Not fully, not freely, but enough to feel the weight in my chest lighten a little. I stood slowly and walked toward Mr. Hines. My legs felt shaky, but my back was straight. I held my head up because today, for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone had heard me. Inside that courtroom, the judge had looked Marcus in the eye and told him that my labor had value, that my safety mattered, that his behavior had consequences. I kept replaying the look on his face, that mix of disbelief and rage when the judge said those words, like it had never once occurred to him that what he did behind closed doors could echo so loudly in public. I thanked Mr. Hines, his voice low and calm as always, telling me we'd talk more in the next few days. Then he left, and I stood alone again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, a text from Malik. "Can I come see the new place?" I stared at the screen, heart racing. Right after that, Jada sent a picture. It was the 3 of us at the beach years ago, her tiny arms wrapped around my waist. She added a red heart. My throat tightened, but not from pain this time. That bus ride back to the apartment felt different. I sat by the window and rested my forehead against the glass, watching the city blur by. My reflection stared back at me, tired but steady. I thought about all the things I'd lost: the house, the routine, the version of family I clung to even after it stopped being real. But I also thought about everything I was starting to gain: my own bank account, my own decisions, my own voice. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't budgeting in secret or swallowing my questions just to keep peace. I didn't have to justify every grocery item or hide receipts. There was power in that. A quiet, grounded power I hadn't known I was allowed to have. The fear was still there, of course, about the money, the custody, how the kids would cope long term. But there was something else now, something new, a thread of hope stitching itself through the chaos. By the time I got to the apartment, the sun was lower in the sky, casting that warm orange glow through the blinds. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the hum of the fridge and the smell of whatever candle I lit the night before. The space was still small, still imperfect, but it felt more like home than the big house ever did. I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the mattress, taking it all in. I picked up the photo Jada had sent and propped it against the wall. 3 smiling faces, no tension, no lies, just love. I wiped at the tears that slipped down without permission and whispered, "We'll be okay." I didn't know exactly how or when, but I believed it in a way I hadn't before. Because for the first time, I wasn't building a life around someone else's moods or mistakes. I was building something of my own. I texted Malik back, told him he could come by Saturday and bring his favorite snacks. Told Jada I loved the photo. I thought about what it would mean to have them see me here in this new version of my life. No pretending, no performing, just real. I opened my notebook and started jotting down small goals: pay off the phone bill, call the community college about night classes, get a real bed frame. Nothing huge, nothing flashy, just steps forward. I sat there for a while in that quiet space, letting the stillness settle into my bones. Not the silence of tension or fear, but real stillness. I didn't have to ask anyone for permission to breathe here. I didn't have to shrink. I didn't have to justify why I needed peace. I could just have it. I could claim it. As the night crept in and the apartment filled with shadows, I felt something shift inside me. Not a rush of joy, not a movie-ending triumph, just a quiet, steady belief that I could do this, that I could build a life that didn't run on humiliation or silence or survival alone, that I could heal, not all at once, but piece by piece, and that this tiny apartment, this mattress on the floor, this cold cup of coffee and flicker of hope was the beginning. Not the end of something, but the start of everything. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to what I went through. Before you go, tell me in the comments which city or country you're watching from so I know where my story is reaching. If this touched you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of my journey. There are many other real stories like this one already here on the channel, and your support helps me keep sharing them. Thank you for being here with me today, truly. With love and respect.